Hi, today we're going to be talking about features of a nonfiction text. We have reviewed this before. So my nonfiction book I have today is called Castles. And when I open up after my title page, I first turn to my table of contents and think about what is the purpose of a table of contents. We have discussed before, it tells you where to locate the chapter or heading, the name of it, and the page it's located on. So the first one, High on a Hill, page 3, here's High on a Hill. When I turn the page, A Huge Home, page 4, A Huge Home on page 4. So the table of contents tells you what page and the title of each heading or chapter. And a table of contents can be located in a nonfiction book or also some fiction chapter books as well. On the very first page, High on a Hill, this whole section is all going to be about High on a Hill. This is your heading. We have talked about that the heading is the main idea of that section. So everything under that will be about whatever that heading says. When I turn the page, I have a new heading, A Huge Home. So everything located under that heading is going to be about a huge home. When I turn the page again, I have a new heading, Types of Castles. So everything in this section will be about types of castles. And as you look through the pages, I'm hoping that some other nonfiction text features are popping out and you're thinking, oh yeah, we've talked about that before. So we'll go back to the beginning. High on a hill. The ruins of a huge stone castle stand on a hill. Hundreds of years ago, this castle was full of people. This yellow box right here, we've talked about that before. Do you remember what it's called? It's an information box. It gives you extra information about something on that subject. So this says, some castles were built on cliffs, so they had a good view out to sea. Can you make an inference why they would need to be high on a cliff so that they could see out to the sea? Think about that, we'll come back to it. The next section, A Huge Home. So everything on these two pages will be about a huge home. Castles were built for rich people such as lords and ladies or kings and queens. And if you notice this picture right here, it's not just a photograph of a castle, but it's a drawing. And then outside this drawing, you have captions that tell you more about that drawing. This is kind of like a diagram because it's a layout of what a castle would look like. And then these are labels in a sentence form explaining the different parts of the castle. Servants worked and lived in the castle grounds. Soldiers guarded the castle gate. The castle's main tower is called the keep. A thick wall was built to keep enemies out. So maybe you can make another inference. Why do soldiers guard the castle gate? And why is there a thick wall to keep the enemies out? Why is that there? Why would they need that? We'll come back to that. We have another text box down here, little information box. Rich people had 2 or 3 castles. If they were tired of one, they moved to another. It's pretty fancy. Okay, we have a new heading, Types of Castles. So now we're going to read about types of castles. Some castles were made of wood. The keep was built on a high mound of earth. Here's a label pointing to what the keep is. And there's the mound is like a big hill. Other castles were made of stone. They had strong towers and thick walls. Okay, we have a little text box right here. Building a castle sometimes took more than 20 years. Some castles had water around them. This is called a moat. The moat helped to keep out enemies. People crossed the moat on a wooden platform called a drawbridge. The drawbridge was pulled up with chains if an enemy came near. So earlier I made you think about an inference about why they would need to build their castle high on a cliff or high ground. And then why would they need thick walls? and guards at the drawbridge. And then why would there need that extra protection of that water moat with the drawbridge? So I can infer that these are their defense systems to keep everybody in the castle safe from enemy attacks. If they have a high on a cliff, they can see out to the waters to see if any enemy boats are coming in to attack. And if you only have one drawbridge and it's the only way in and out of that castle, if you pull it up, it'll be more difficult for enemies to climb over those thick walls. And oftentimes in the water, in the moats, there were alligators, and it was pretty dangerous where people couldn't go through the water. So these were how they would keep their people safe and how they built their defense systems. Okay, we have a new heading, the keep. So now we're going to talk more about the keep. There were lots of rooms inside the keep. The best rooms belonged to the Lord and his family. Okay, so we have a picture, more like a diagram, and we have several labels pointing to sections of the keep. So we have a chapel, where they would do church, a guard room for the guards, a bedroom, a great hall. A great hall is where they would have big dining parties and maybe dances, but a huge dining room, and they would all eat together. Then we have a storeroom. They would store all their supplies. Okay, we have another text box down here. Castles were always full of rats. Can you spot 10 rats in the keep? A castle toilet was just a hole in the floor. Underneath was a chute that led to a pit outside. So they didn't have bathrooms or a toilet that you're used to. Aren't you glad you live today and not hundreds of years ago? Okay, so I have a new heading, Castle Life. So all of this will be about the castle life. If I turn the page, a new heading. So again, the purpose of this nonfiction text feature is that's the main idea for what that section is about. Castle owners lived in comfortable rooms. They slept in big, soft beds like this red one. Curtains around the bed kept them snug and warm. Servants had to sleep on the hard, cold floor. Here's a text box. People in castles got up early. Sometimes a bell was rung at dawn to wake everyone. So dawn would be when the sun is rising. Stone castles could be damp and chilly. Huge fires helped to keep rooms warm. People had baths in big wooden tubs. Servants heated the water over a fire. Castles were noisy places. Servants worked, children played games, and dogs barked. So fun and games, we have a new heading. So what is this section going to be about? Fun and games. There were no televisions in castle times. People had to find other things to do. Acrobats often visited castles to put on shows. Jugglers juggled balls or knives. Musicians sang songs and played instruments. And you have a picture of the acrobats and the jugglers and the musicians. We have another text box. So the purpose of that text box is to give you extra information on that topic. Many castles had a jester. His job was to tell jokes and make everyone laugh. This picture was painted about 700 years ago. It shows a group of musicians playing tunes for a king. 700 years ago, wow. Okay, we have a new heading, hunting. Lords and ladies enjoyed hunting. Birds called falcons were trained to hunt. Here are 4 stages of training a falcon. Okay, so this text feature is like a how-to. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And we have seen this before in stories such as how to create a paper airplane or how to cook something, how to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. So this is a little how-to directions. So 1, the falcon got used to being carried and fed. 2, it was kept on a rope and flew after bits of food. 3, later, the falcon was able to fly freely. 4, it killed small birds and came back to its owner. A hood helped to keep the falcon calm when it was taken out to be trained. So there's this little hood. It was very fashionable to own a falcon. People took them everywhere. Isn't that funny? Can you imagine taking your bird everywhere with you? I guess like people take your dog everywhere.